First up is Bernard TAY from Google. Take it away.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for dropping by. So, quick intro. My name is Bernie TAY. I'm a product specialist focusing on mobile. Today, I'm going to talk about some key ideas that I think will be very interesting for you guys who's building an apps business. Okay. So over the past 2 years, I think a lot of things have changed. Mobile games have changed in a big way. Now a lot of it is smartphones. And we've seen a lot of, so when you first started out 2 years ago, mobile advertising was pretty much a standard. Things have evolved a little bit, and I want to talk about some ideas about how to continue to evolve with this changing dynamics. Okay. So I'm going to focus today user acquisition, retention, and monetization. I think these are all three critical areas where you guys are very interested in. So before I start, though, I want to talk about some of the announcements we made last week. How many of you have seen the I/O from last week? Yeah? Okay, so we made lots of announcements. I want to actually call out a few of them. So first one, social sign-in. Anyone know what that is? Okay, social sign-in is a bit like Facebook Connect. We've seen how social can play a very integral part of gaming, and we've heard all your voices, all your complaints, and we're actually going to do something in that space. Okay, so Google Sign-in is one of those. We launched a set of gaming APIs, which I think is going to be really cool for you guys to actually get into the social piece. And then we also talked about cloud platform, where we allow you to actually host your games, having all the cool stuff about availability and everything else. And then we also launched the new AdMob. Okay, I'll talk through some of these pieces in the slides later. So let's start. User acquisition. So 2 years and a bit ago, there weren't that many apps. I mean, we saw Robio, we saw Paper Toss, and a few other apps, right? You go to the App Store and literally it's easy to find the apps that you want to download. 2 years on, that's not really the case anymore. There are lots of apps. It's even difficult to keep track with all the growing numbers of the two app stores. So a user going to the App Store these days, they have tons and tons of apps to choose from. And if your app is just sitting there waiting to be discovered, it's going to take a while for people to actually find you. So anyone here have an app in the App Store? Yeah? Anyone? So for those of you, have you guys purchased users? Ran a campaign, purchased users? How did that go? This lady here. Sorry.
Yeah, I purchased some games
Okay.
through App Store.
How was the performance? I mean, how much did it cost you?
Around $1.
Say CPI. How much did it cost for one install?
I think around $1.
I'm sorry?
Around $1.
$1? Okay. And then what's your lifetime value of a user?
I think I like it.
I mean, how much do you make from one user? So you pay $1 to install that user. How much did that user generate for you?
Not too sure. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Well, so what we've seen is that LTV is actually quite small compared to how much it costs to actually install someone. Okay, you mentioned $1. In some cases, that could be $3 in some markets. Okay, and then when you think about the LTV, different games have different LTV, ranges from 0 all the way up to $1 maybe. Okay, so as you can see, the numbers don't really make up if you were to purchase users, right? So what if I tell you, hey, this LTV now, if you were to increase the LTV of each user by 3 or 4 times, so I assume 3 or 4 times means possibly up to $2, $3 LTV. Okay, would that still, if LTV was that high, I think you would feel a lot better purchasing user, right? So let's talk about some ideas of how to improve the LTV. So I guess if we're talking about user acquisition, we need to think about where the eyeball's going, right? So I imagine people would go, the eyeballs would be going to mobile games, right? Since we're in mobile games. So lots of people will be playing with mobile games, using some apps, right? They would also be using infotainment, entertainment, that kind of information. Search, right? Everyone does search. YouTube, lots of people use YouTube, right? So that eyeballs are going to all these different places. And let's try and capture these eyeballs with some of our products here, okay? So if all these people are playing mobile games, mobile apps, I guess the best way to find them is to actually find them inside these apps, right? So AdWords, so who knows about AdMob? Okay, so previously AdMob, you can run a campaign inside AdMob, right? That has changed now. We've actually moved the promotion piece of AdMob into AdWords. Okay, AdWords, I'm sure most of you have heard of. It's a product that's been around for a long time, very stable, very powerful. And what we've done is we've pushed the AdMob piece into the Google stack, okay, to get all the cool pieces out of the Google stack. So in AdWords, there are lots of cool features. One of them that we recently launched is what we call Conversion Optimizer. So everyone talks about buying on CPI, right? We don't sell on CPI today, but what we can do is to optimize towards a CPI. So let's say you know your LTV is $1, and you want your CPI to be no more than $2. Okay, then you can set that inside AdWords, and when the campaign's running, the system will actually optimize towards that CPI. Okay, as a side note, Gree, I'm sure everyone here knows Gree. So Gree used our conversion optimizer, and they came out with really, really good stats. 150% increase in app download rate. Okay, 52% decrease in cost per download, and 49% increase in click-through. Okay, some really, really cool numbers here. Search, well, everyone does search. Capturing the eyeballs in search would be one very, very good way of channeling that user back into the piece that you're interested in, right? YouTube, well, with the new API that we announced last week, you can actually, within your game, you can actually allow the user to record the gameplay and then ship that over to YouTube. Okay, so that will help you drive a lot of viral awareness, ultimately helping you with user acquisition. Google sign-in, so it's similar to Facebook Connect, but what it also allows you to do is to actually install an app directly from desktop onto your mobile. So imagine if you were to run a search campaign on desktop, a user come and they're searching for a game. and you can run a search campaign, point the user back to the Play Store page, and the user can literally just download the app directly into the phone. Okay. So Google Play, I think I don't need to talk too much about that. It's the go-to place for all Android apps download. So this combining with the search campaign that I talked about earlier, you can really create this end-to-end play that we've seen to drive a lot of downloads. I can share some stats with you offline if you guys are interested. We launched gaming service. Specifically, we launched 4 features, which I'll talk about later. One of the piece that's very interesting is multiplayer, where you can actually invite another user to play, and that, well, so if a user is helping you invite other users to come to play, then that user that you previously paid for, the value of that user potentially has doubled, right? So if you play along those lines, you can try and drag and make this one user that you paid for multiply its lifetime value by a couple of times. That will make your numbers work, okay? Retention. So how do we retain the user? How do we reduce the number of users leaving? And if they leave, how do we bring them back? Okay. Not easy, but let's talk about some of the strategies that we could consider. So I mentioned the gaming API. So I think some other game store have already got this, and we've heard the complaints from you guys, and we actually brought this out. Achievements, leaderboards, these really drive the social component of it. Real-time player I talked about, and then cloud safe allows you to keep your service up and running, and in a very secure way, right? YouTube can be used here to drive engagement and the viral awareness, okay? How many of you know about Kakao Talk? Right, so you know in Kakao you can, if you've done something great, you can brag about it, right? This is brag thing. Well, instead of bragging with just one picture, now you can use YouTube to brag your gameplay in video, okay? I think which is a lot more compelling. And then in AdWords, so really, apart from the piece I mentioned earlier, we also launched 2 other pieces that's really geared towards retention, okay? Remarketing and in-app conversion. So, remarketing. What it does is it allows you to run a campaign against a set of users that you previously know something about them. Okay, I have a diagram that shows you what happens there. In-app conversion tracking. So it allows you to capture events that's happening inside an app. So if a user is playing the game and it clicks on an in-app purchase or click on a particular ad, something that they do inside the app, you can actually track all of that, capture that, and then use that again with AdWords to run some really targeted stuff against the users. Okay. So one example could be. So how many of you here don't like the idea of mixing ads and in-app purchases together? Yeah. Okay. So you may want to push ads to guys who are not paying, and not push ads to guys who are paying, right? So this feature actually allows you to segment the users, okay, and then decide what to do with each of that segment of users. Okay, I think that's very, very powerful. So here's a quick description of what actually happens. So user downloads your app, and when a user downloads your app, what we actually do is we capture who has downloaded that app, and we add that list. Okay, we start to create a list. Okay, the user leaves. Right, they play the game, got tired of it, but now you have a new app that you want to get back these users. Well, you already know these guys have downloaded the app. What you can do is you can then find this user. It doesn't have to be the same app that they installed before, But now that you know this user, we can find this user in all the apps that they're using, and then run a campaign against them. Okay, I think that's quite powerful, right? So monetization. So Google supports all the monetization channel through Play, through DFP, and through AdMob. I'll talk through them. So freemium. I think it's agreed, it's a pretty well accepted thing that freemium is the way to go, right? IAP is huge. We've seen a 700% increase year on year in rev. Subscription is actually doing really well too. Actually has doubled quarter on quarter since it started. So if you haven't considered these monetization, definitely think about it. Paid still exists today, but it's rapidly decreasing in numbers. Who else still dish out apps in the paid model? No? Okay. And then on the advertising side, so we have 2 products that's geared towards helping you monetize. For the smaller publishers who don't have a direct sales force, they just want to monetize, we have AdMob, right? And for larger publishers where you have huge inventory and you don't want to be putting your inventory into a network, you want to sell it direct, you can use DFP. So DFP is a product, again, that's been around for a long time, very powerful, and it primarily allows you to sell your inventory direct. Okay, DFP is also can be also backfilled with AdMob, so you can sell all your stuff direct, and what you don't sell, you can then pipe it into the network. Okay, continue to monetize that. So while many apps are moving to the freemium model, okay, so as you can see, lots of downloads are free. This chart actually hides the fact that some apps, you download the app for free, but then once you play the first 2 level, you actually have to pay. Okay, this doesn't capture that, but anyway, the bulk of the downloads is still free, even if you include those numbers. So IAP, I mean, everyone heard of IAP. Everyone heard of KakaoTalk and Line and how successful they are, right? But outside of Japan, actually only 5% of the users actually pay in IAP. Okay, so you have a remaining 95% of users, which you won't be monetizing if you don't include ads. Okay. So what this chart actually is showing is that most users will start to pay after 10 sessions. They run on the game and play, and most users won't pay after 10 sessions. Okay, you do get the odd one. Well, 1 in 5 of them will pay after the first session. About 1 in 3 of them will actually pay after the second session. Okay, but all that to say, if you were to wait for all of them to start paying, you're going to be waiting for a while, right? So you need to think about something else. IAP is getting a lot of mention. Okay, Gree and Ye talks about IAP. In fact, their idea is that you can concentrate on a set of limited paying users, and that set of users will drive all your revenue that you need. Okay, so that worked for Japan, because IAP penetration in Japan is like 30%. Okay, but outside of Japan and Korea, like I mentioned earlier, it's 5%. So if you depend on IAP alone, that's not going to be enough. It's not going to be enough, and you're actually losing opportunity of monetization. So you definitely need to think about other ways. So what we really propose here is to have a mixed strategy. Okay, so I think a lot of you have not just one game, you have a few games, right? Some games work for IAPs, some games work better for ads, and even within the same app, some screens are actually better for IAP and some screens are better for ads, right? In general, change of levels or anything that's not in the gameplay screen are generally good for ads, okay? And in the gameplay, when the user is actually playing with the game, you don't want to be screwing around sticking ads there. So take those ads out and put it in places where just not in gameplay screens. Okay. So that's it. Thank you. Questions?
Appreciate that. That's great. Are there any questions from the audience? Come on, this is your chance. Is there any information you can share with us? You laid out a variety of options there about how you can diversify the way that you're making revenue from your customers. Any anecdotal evidence or numbers you can share with us about how that breaks down? Like, if I'm using a diversified strategy, what kind of boost would I expect from adding advertising instead of just having free to play or in-app purchase into my game?
Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, if you just think of penetration-wise, the number of users who would actually do IAP is 5%, right? So you're missing out 95% of the users if you don't do anything else other than IAP. Bear in mind, IAP and all these paid models, you're actually pulling money from the user, right? Whereas in advertising, you're leaving the users alone, and money comes from somewhere else, the advertisers. Okay, so in a game where, users purchasing capability is in general limited, right? So if you put all your eggs in that basket, you get to a point where it reaches their limit, and you're still left with that big ass base that you're not monetizing. So if you want concrete numbers, I can probably talk about it offline. But yeah.
Right. But significant enough to consider.
We've seen in our numbers that ads make a big contribution.
Okay. Anything else in the audience? Oh, you have a question? Thought you were telling me to shut up.
Yeah, I just got a question about the DFP. How big is big? As in, how many impressions a day would you be looking at on an inventory basis to deal with DFP?
So, there are two products. There's DFP Small Business, where literally anyone can get on, and then there's the DFP Premium, where you need to hit. Once you hit a particular threshold, which I think is 90 million, once you hit that, then it goes into a premium model. Did that answer your question?
Got time for one more. Anybody else? Going, and gone. Bernard, thank you very much